The final frontier.
These are the voyages of the starship
Enterprise. Its continuing mission
to explore strange new worlds,
to seek out new life
and new civilizations,
to boldly go where no one has gone before.
It was clear that having made 2 of these movies, that having another director come in to bring his or her point of view and voice to the proceedings was the right move. And we were very lucky to find Justin Lin, who had obviously proven himself again and again as an incredibly strong storyteller, filmmaker with movies of incredible energy and action. But what struck me more than that was his love of Star Trek. He grew up a lifelong fan of what Gene Roddenberry created. And when he spoke about the characters, he talked about them in a way that felt very much from the inside out. So I felt really excited to see how he was going to bring his love of these characters to life.
Star Trek had this sense of exploration that I really liked as a kid. It was very exciting to me because it was not something I was seeking out, but I realized how much it was part of my life growing up.
When it came time to write the script, there were a lot of ideas that were being floated around. And we had worked very closely with Doug Young, who is an amazing writer. And we talked early on about this odd idea of pairing him up with someone who knew and loved Trek deeply. And the first person that came to mind was Simon Pegg. Simon not only plays Scotty, but he also grew up with Star Trek being an enormous part of his childhood and his life. So the idea of putting those 2 together felt like a fun idea, and it was very clear very quickly that they were this perfect team to bring the story to life.
In the writing process, having Simon and Doug, it was something that I think I've always wished for in a collaboration.
It wasn't just Simon and I sitting in a room and kind of dreaming and kind of going, it'd be great if we could do this. But Justin, who has this incredible visual mind, could right there, even before we put it in the script, add these elements where suddenly everybody would go, oh yeah, that's a great movie moment.
I would do that, cut to our 3 guys, and then they come in.
As soon as I started to see Justin work, I became very fascinated by his process, and we found a rhythm, and it worked really well.
The first Star Trek movie that we did was the forming of the group. Star Trek Into Darkness was very much a kind of galvanizing of that group. And Star Trek Beyond is the first time you see them on their 5-year mission, engaged in the kind of adventure that you associate the original series with, which is sort of the idea of traveling out into the void to see what we discover.
One of the notes that JJ always directed towards us was that the threat in the movie have a very far-reaching effect, and that it always come back to Earth. So how can we make Earth a potential victim of whatever's going wrong here, with it being so far away? Because what we're trying to get across in this movie is that they're not anywhere near Earth anymore. So we created a sort of proxy Earth, which is Yorktown.
Captain, approaching Yorktown base.
I'm on my way, Mr. Sulu.
Yorktown is a literal manifestation of what it would look like if a bunch of different species and societies came together to coexist equally, but it's intentionally not a planet. We wanted to make something man-made or alien-made because it never belonged to anyone and sort of represents the most peaceful coexistence of a lot of species.
Couldn't we just rent some space on a planet?
Showing geographical favoritism among inducted Federation worlds could cause diplomatic tension.
It was important to be able to explore this idea of utopia, of the Federation world, but at the same time pushing it into the discussion of frontiers, of exploration. It was really exciting to have this place where it connects everybody. And that connection, which is what's most positive about it, potentially could be its downfall too.
Kalara was the character that really starts off the story.
Unidentified, non-Federation vessel.
We love the idea that a character was using the Federation's goodwill against them.
You must have someone who can help us.
On the Crawl side of things, we wanted somebody who would challenge everything that the Federation stood for and felt like he should have this philosophy that being equal and peaceful lowers everyone to the lowest common denominator as opposed to letting the strong naturally rise to the top.
Progress is not easy for people. So to have a character who, right when all this stuff started, Starfleet and the Federation, he didn't buy into it and went off to do his own thing, was a good way of examining what does it mean to live in a universe without conflict, or, you know, maybe is, in a Darwinian way, struggle is necessary.
Without struggle, you would never know who what you truly are.
Throughout the film, I wanted to find a way to deconstruct what has made Star Trek, the Federation, Starfleet so great, so that at the end of it, we can kind of reaffirm why it's been with us for so long. And the takedown of the Enterprise was probably the most literal interpretation of deconstructing.
Watching the crew of the Enterprise separated, but then have to scheme and plan and work together in separate pairs, it really is an amazing thing to see the dynamic and the paradigm of this group of people.
We thought it would be really interesting to not just, in theory, talk about their friendship, show their friendships, and demonstrate what they mean to each other, how they interact, and who they are.
Just as a fan of the show, I assumed that they would hang out off screen somewhere, but it was just something that I felt like if I was gonna make a Star Trek film, I wanted to see it on screen. I wanted to move the camera and put it on these characters.
We decided to not only give Sulu a family, but we'd make it a same-sex relationship, because in such an inclusive universe as Star Trek, in a universe where everybody is considered equal, that there wasn't really a really strong gay character in Star Trek. And we thought, wouldn't it be great if one of the main characters, it wasn't just an ancillary character, it was one of the main characters, and that aspect of their character had no bearing on who they were or what happens to them in the film. It's just a detail of who they are. And it also gave us the idea of Sulu having a vested interest in Yorktown as a place that he obviously did not want to see under threat.
I know people will talk about it, but they're a family just like any other family. And the way it's shot, it's not to make it a big point.
We wanted to cast just the right person as Sulu's husband, and it turned out that the right person was Doug Jung, our writer. And so he has a wonderful cameo and now place in the Star Trek canon as Ben Sulu.
One of the exciting things for me coming on this film was to try to introduce a brand new character to the crew.
We thought it should be a woman and wanted to be a new alien race, and we wanted her to be smart and complicated and have a lot of agency, who would learn about the ideals of the Federation for the first time and accept them.
We'll sure as hell never give up on you. That is what being part of a crew is all about.
She's looking for something to believe in, and when she sees it so clearly demonstrated from our guys and what they're going through, you really believe, because of that innocence, that she would understand it and she would say, yes, I want to be a part of that.
This way.
One of the great things about Star Trek is this is meant to be our future. The fun of that is the ability to use artifacts and references that are from our present or our past, because it would still be part of their world.
Let's make some noise. That's a good choice.
There's something kind of wonderful to see how, in some situations, even the most old-fashioned analog piece of technology can actually be incredibly important and meaningful in a futuristic, mostly digital world.
Is that classical music?
Yes, Doctor, it would seem to be.
I wanted to kind of explore and embrace everything in the canon of Star Trek, and the inclusion of the Franklin, that becomes kind of a twist in the film. So I think we came up with an idea that serviced the plot, services the themes. It felt pretty organic.
Is this your ship?
We love the idea of them thinking that they were the first humans somewhere.
It's yours.
And discovering they absolutely weren't.
Oh my good Lord.
And that there was this old Federation technology there.
We took a lot of care into making sure that we were specific about what kind of ship it was, what it could do, so that it fits in the timeline of all that stuff, which is really well established.
First Earth ship capable of Warp 4 went missing in the Gagarin radiation belt in the early 2160s.
Captain Balthazar Edison. How the hell did his ship end up here?
It was an exploratory ship, and it probably would have certain ground transport available in it. And we came up with this idea for the Hiltz PX-70, and that was named after Steve McQueen's character in The Great Escape. We thought it was a nice irony in it being used to get into a prison camp rather than get out.
I wanted this Trek to have more texture and be tactile, and there's nothing more tactile than where the tires meet the dirt, you know?
Justin, to his credit, was like, should I do this? Because people obviously associate me with kind of land transport movies. But it just felt like another nice anachronism that would be fun. And we also like the idea of them having to use very old human things to try and win out.
I remember my initial conversation with JJ, he kind of was handing over the keys and saying, just be bold, make it yours, you know? And I try to take that to heart, and I feel like every frame of this film, whether it's a big action sequence or some small decision, I go back to that initial conversation of being bold. And I think that will show for everybody that watches the film.